Mr. Shaker placed a portfolio on the table and slid it towards Steve. These are the schematics for the alarm system as it was submitted to us. His eyes flicked towards Annie. Please make sure that the system matches the paperwork verbatim. And before anyone asks, Kettle Creek does not have their own fire department, so the emergency numbers their central station are to be given are for the department here in Chester. Why doesn't Kettle Creek have a fire department? Annie asked Tabby in a whisper. Small towns like Kettle Creek sometimes don't, Tabby told her. They're lucky they have a police department, Mr. Shaker added, in response to their conversation. I'd be surprised if they had an overall population of 150. The high school was designed when there were a lot of people in town, and the redesign is meant to encourage growth. He turned to Steve. I want you and Annie to check the gas connections in the science, kitchen, and home ec rooms. There may be a gas stove in the teacher's lounge as well, I'm not sure. Then make the calls to the central station and verify their emergency contact numbers. You can all do the system check together. Robert, you're on electrical. You know the drill. That's all I want you to do while you're there. I don't want to hear that you were fucking around with Anton because you rushed through the work. Rob was the obvious choice for this job because he worked previously as an electrician himself, so he knew shoddy work if he saw it. Anton, I want you to check the heating and air. Anton smiled at this, probably because it would give him an excuse to go into the basement. And Tabby, you back them up with whatever they need and organize the paperwork. Oh, come on, she said. Don't oh come on me. Steve's got his hands full with the system analysis. He's just going to be feeding you information anyway. I'm just asking you to put it all in the right place so that it can be filed correctly. It's not rocket science. It just seems like something that can be done back at the office, that's all, she said. I don't see why you even need me backing them up. Mr. Shaker looked as though he was losing his patience with her, and Rob was stifling a laugh, a little too obviously. Because I want every single bit of the job done by Friday morning. It's been in the pipeline way too long as it is. You know there are numerous smaller jobs involved that you need to get done. I'm expecting you to pick up the slack. If I didn't think we needed 5 people on the job, I wouldn't be sending 5. It's not like I like paying people for doing nothing. 4, technically, Tabby said. Annie's just tagging along. If it was possible, Annie sunk even further into her chair. Miss Marsh, Mr. Shaker practically yelled, that's enough! That's the way it is. I'm in charge, and I don't really care if you're not happy with it. Am I making myself clear? Fine, she said, folding her arms defiantly. Annie felt minuscule, like a child among adults. Well, maybe with the exception of Tabby. She wanted to come forward, to make herself known, but she had no words, and her throat felt tight and dry. She wished she was home with Henry. Suddenly, the expensive clothes and makeup made her feel foolish. The meeting deteriorated into idle conversation, mostly carried by Steve on the intricacies of the Kettle Creek alarm systems. He voiced his opinion that he felt that the particular system that they had chosen was cheap and not worth its weight in scrap metal. The conversation turned to the various companies and models. It seemed everyone was more knowledgeable in this subject than Annie. Even the prima donna Tabby had her 2 cents to put in. She felt her mind wandering, and time passed painfully slow. Annie watched, all too conscious of her silence. Half an hour passed. An hour 15. Finally, Annie cleared her throat. Mr. Shaker looked at her as if just noticing that she was in the room. Oh, Annie, he apologized. I'm sorry, I already kept you longer than I said I would. If you need me, I can stay longer. She was already damning herself for her martyristic tendencies. No, it's fine, he said. You can go home, it's your day off. She nodded and got up from the table. Just be here bright and early on Thursday, he said. There's a very good chance that you won't be leaving until well into the afternoon, but we might get lucky. She nodded and disappeared out the door. Outside, the bright sunlight seemed to revitalize her. She felt as if she could breathe for the first time since she arrived. She wondered how she would get through this, when it seemed like the hardest thing to do was simply speak in front of other people. She felt paralyzed by the fear of making a fool of herself. Why did she even care what these people thought? She suddenly regretted quitting smoking 6 years ago. She could really use a cigarette. Well, it was already 3:30, and school would be out, which meant at least Henry would be home when she got there. She realized, with a sudden pang of guilt, that she'd neglected to leave him a note explaining where she'd been. He knew she was supposed to have the day off and would be worried. As if summoned by the thought, her cell phone rang. "Hey, baby," she said. "Hey, where are you?" "Oh, I got called into a meeting at work. I'm coming home to you now." His voice felt like a life raft in a vast ocean. Meanwhile, back in the office, as they often do, the conversation turned to the girl who was no longer present. "I don't even understand why she's coming with us," Tabby was saying. "Because Chase has a crush on her," Anton laughed. "Because she needs the practice," Steve grumbled. "Just how much practice does any one person need?" Tabby asked. "I seem to remember you needing an awful lot of second chances yourself, Tabitha," Mr. Shaker said. "Besides, it's not your concern. It's mine. If I were you, I would be more concerned about my own job. Speaking of which, where's the paperwork for Hoffman's Bakery that you promised to have on my desk this morning?" "It's in my car," she said, annoyed. "Would you like me to go get it now?" Yeah, that would be nice," he said. She huffed and got up from her seat. "Personally, I like her. She's a nice girl," Rob said, still talking about Annie. "You like anything with tits," Tabby said, walking out of the room. Rob turned towards the others. "Well, she is right." Half of the table erupted into boyish laughter. "She's just pissed off because hers came with a price tag," Anton said. "Hey," Rob said with a shrug. "Flesh or plastic, doesn't matter. If I can touch them, they're real enough to me." "Okay, guys, that's enough," Steve said. "Yeah, if we could get back to work here," Mr. Shaker agreed. "If Tabby heard you talking that way, she could bring you both up on sexual harassment charges." "Sorry," Rob said, chuckling. "I thought we were pretty much done." Just a few more small things," Mr. Shaker said. "Should we bring proton packs with us so we can catch a ghost?" Anton asked. Mr. Shaker frowned at him. "I was wondering when this was going to come up. Seriously, I don't want to hear one word about Kettle Creek being haunted. It is total and utter BS. I don't want you guys scaring the girls." "Well, what really did happen in Kettle Creek?" Rob asked, stiffening. Mr. Shaker shrugged. "A freak fire. School burned down. A bunch of people got killed. End of story." "I don't know what to tell you, Rob. Sad shit happens in this world. It's a fucked up place, but that doesn't mean it's haunted." "Maybe we should bring a Ouija board just to be safe," Anton laughed. Rob forced himself to laugh along with him, but he hoped to God that he wasn't serious. You've been listening to Ambuscade, Book 1 of The Pain Chaser, written and performed by Patrick E. Malloy. If you like what you've heard, you can buy your own copy of the book at www.patrickemalloy.com. That's Patrick, the letter E, Molloy. All music for this production was written and performed by Raymond Jelly. And I'd also like to personally thank fellow writer-podcaster Nathan Lowell for all his help in getting this production started. Until next time, enjoy the nightmares.